Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 364 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by former heavyweight world title challenger Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing this week, my man?
I'm doing good, my man. How about you?
All good, my friend, all good. Always good when speaking with you. Slight bit of a sore throat, so I'm going to try to take things easy. But yeah, aside from that, everything is all good. In part one, we're actually going to do the review part and the news. Then welcome our special guest, which will be Harlem Eubank, fighting this weekend. Of course, the cousin of Chris Eubank Jr. We'll be speaking to him in a few moments. And then in part two, it's going to be the preview part because there's really not much at all to review. So yeah, we're going to dive straight into the review part. There was supposed to be a card taking place on the weekend that got cancelled. We mentioned it as well last week. Dusty Hernandez Harrison, his father, Buddy Harrison, was fatally shot. And yeah, there was obviously a gathering to reminisce on his life, and it was a candlelight vigil. And that went ahead. And Dusty was intending to fight on the weekend, but no, the card in the end got pulled. And Anthony Peterson was supposed to be on that undercard, but the entire card, like I say, got pulled. The only fight that did end up happening is the one that took place at the Auditorio Municipal Fausto Gutierrez Moreno in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico. No Spanish Mexican accent from me this week due to the sore throat, so I'm not sure if people are going to be happy about that. Maybe they're going to enjoy the fact I'm not doing it, because maybe it annoys some people, I don't know. I just like to, display it every time I get a chance to, mainly just for Eddie. But anyway, this one took place in Mexico. Luis Nery was set to be taking on Jesus Garcia, but in the end, he pulled out the fight. I'm not sure what happened there, but in stepped the late replacement David Carmona, and David Carmona was knocked out in 3 rounds. So Luis Nery now 33-1. That was it, like I say, for the review part. So yeah, there really wasn't too much at all to go over there. Moving on to the news part then, before we wrap up this bit and welcome our special guest. This piece of news is where I'm going to start here. Joe Cordina has been stripped by the IBF. He suffered a hand injury in training, and he was set to be taking on Shavkat Rakhimov on November 5th in Abu Dhabi. That one's now off, and the IBF have actually, like I say, stripped Joe Cordina, which has caused a lot of discussions online now, because a lot of people are saying, wow, the IBF are a bit harsh here. I mean, the guy's injured. Like, he's posted a picture of his hand. It looks absolutely horrendous. Looks like the kind of hand that you'd put on for Halloween when you go knocking on people's doors. Like, it literally looks horrendous, his hand. And he's injured. He's legitimately injured, can't have the fight due to injury, so why is he being stripped? But then apparently there was some kind of agreement in place for when he boxed Kenichi Ogawa for the title, that no matter what, the winner had to take on Rakhimov or by the end of the year, I think it was. And obviously Cordina's not going to be able to fulfill that obligation, and therefore he's been stripped. So yeah, it seems a bit mad, but it is what it is. In other news, what else do we have? Richardson Hitchens will be taking on Yomar Alamo for the IBF North American Super Lightweight title. That's going to be the co-main event. Montana Love getting in with Steve Spark for the WBA Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. Again, the date for that, Saturday, November 12th at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland, Ohio. It's going to be live on DAZN, obviously a Matchroom card there. In other news, what else do we have? This is a mad fight, actually. November the 12th, we're going to see the UK's Denzel Bentley coming off a great win a few weeks back over Marcus Morrison. He goes out to the States to take on the Kazakh danger man, Janibek Alimkhanuly, who, of course, dispatched of Danny Dignam in pretty brutal fashion. And a lot of people say that Demetrius Andrade decided to, move out the way of Janibek and move up to the weight class above to stay out of his way. That's just speculation, of course. But yeah, Alimkhanuly, a southpaw power puncher, he's a serious problem. And yeah, I mean, who would want to fight him? But credit to Denzel Bentley for stepping up here. And it is going down, by the way, at the Pearl Concert Theatre. I haven't heard of this place. At Palms Casino in Las Vegas. And also on the undercard in the co-main event, Sinisa Estrada, the female that looks a lot like Jennifer Lopez, but obviously hits about as hard as Teofimo Lopez. She will be defending her WBA minimum weight world title against Jasmine Villarino, I should say. Do we have anything else at this point? Yes, the final piece of news. Maurizio Lara obviously was supposed to have been fighting Lee Wood. He will be fighting on October 22nd, so not too long now to go. He gets in with Jose San Martin. That one's going to be, like I say, October 22nd in Mexico City, live on DAZN. That's the headliner there. Few other fights on the undercard, not really anything massive, to be honest. Reshat Mati on the undercard. Anyway, that wraps up the news part of the show. So we've done things a little bit different here in part one. The first part, of course, was the review part, nothing really to mention, just the one card. And then the news part I've just wrapped up there. The final thing for me to do before we wrap up part one is to welcome this week's special guest. Please note that this interview was recorded before the news broke that Conor Benn had failed a VADA drugs test. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated super lightweight prospect. It is, of course, Mr. Harlem Eubank. Harlem, welcome back on the show once again, my man.
Thanks for having me, man.
So, Harlem, we last spoke back in May. It was just after you'd beaten Sean Masher-Dodd. Since then, you have boxed the one time. Obviously, that mad fight against Elliot Chavez in Newcastle back in July. Your opponent was disqualified in round 9 of a 10-rounder, I should say. Just briefly, sum that fight up for me, because it was mad, obviously. And, yeah, what was it like to be on the receiving end of some of those dirty tactics by the Mexican?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy experience. I was outboxing him nice and cleanly, and he obviously felt like he had no other way to turn the tide other than trying to strike after the break. It was the first time I've really come across that. So it was something else to deal with and overcome and come back firing stronger, really.
Yeah, because obviously that when he was hitting you on the break, the first time when you went down, it was you went down quite heavy. Quite honestly, you could have and possibly should have stayed down. You'd have got a DQ, obviously.
Yeah, well, I think that was definitely an option, but I wanted to. That's not what I'm about. I want to go out firing, and the dirty tactics only made me want to kind of punish him more. So I wanted to continue and come back with my own licks and punish him. And that's what I continued to do. And then he came back and done the same again. So at that point, the referee, took it into his hands.
And obviously your next fight takes place this weekend at the O2 as part of that Eubank Benn undercard. You'll be boxing Spain's David Campillo. His record, 11-3 with a draw. The mad thing, though, of course, is that all 3 of his losses are against guys who have now retired. It's a weird statistic. How much trouble have you had finding tape of the guy, or do you not really watch tape, Harlem?
I haven't found much of him, but I don't think there's too much available of him either. But I don't really study my opponents too much. I get a kind of basic understanding of the style and apply my just applying my best performance will be enough, and figure them out early on, and get a grip to them throughout the fight. That's usually the tactics I apply. I don't study too much and overthink. They do that. I just get an idea of what type of fighter they are, what basic kind of style they use, and apply my style to that.
And he himself, he took about 6.5 years out of boxing from late 2015 to 2022. Since coming back, he's had one fight. He won the one fight. Are you looking to make a statement against this guy and get him out of there within the 6 rounds? I know it's only a 6-rounder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking to make a statement when I fight, whether that's stopping the guy or boxing, to the best of my ability. But I'm always looking to put in a statement and show what I can do, and if that results in a devastating knockout or a clinical boxing performance, I'm happy either way. But that's it's down to what happens in the fight.
And obviously, this kind of opponent isn't the kind of guy you're particularly setting your sights on. Is there perhaps something bigger on the horizon in the near future at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think this one was kind of in quick succession of the last one, and I think there's one shortly on the horizon after. So it's building towards big title fights, as far as I can see it, towards the end of the year and early next year. There's going to be some big fights, but yeah, I'm having a lot in quick succession, and this is what I need to develop the craft and make sure everything's polished for them big fights.
No, without a doubt. And your cousin Chris, of course, tops the bill. As we mentioned, he takes on Benn. Being as non-biased as possible, how much of a chance do you give Benn here? Because quite honestly, most people I've spoken to don't really give him a chance at all. And they're people that obviously aren't related to the Eubanks. But how do you feel? What do you think his chances are?
I think a lot of people, a lot of casuals are giving him a big chance in this fight. Like when I look online, it's the comment sections, and it really looks like most people are for Benn, in terms of their predictions, or whether they just, I don't know if they just want Chris to lose, or whether they really think that Benn's gonna cause an upset or whatever. But that's what I'm seeing online. But I think it's gonna be. I can't see any way that Chris doesn't come out on top in this fight.
And we've all seen the videos Chris has been posting of himself eating all kinds of delicious looking food. Some people felt like those videos were maybe recorded outside of training camp and only posted in training camp at some kind of attempt at mind games. It doesn't look the case. I saw him with Salt Bay. He was even saying 60%. What do you make of it?
Yeah. It's just his humor, isn't it? It's his personality. He enjoys the whole people think he has to starve, narrative, and he enjoys kind of mocking that and doing what he likes pretty much. But what is a meal? A meal like that, when you're disciplined throughout your day and your weeks. I mean, how much difference does a cheat meal make, really? So he's enjoying himself, and I think a lot of people are seeing a different side to his character and seeing some humor, and a lot of the comments are like, "Stop making me like you, Chris." So he's enjoying it.
No, certainly. And on the complete other hand, we've got obviously Chris Eubank Sr. telling people this week to boycott the event, saying that getting to 157 could be placing Chris Jr. in a lot of danger. Chris Sr. mentioned brain injuries and stuff like that, which was kind of strong and a bit like, whoa. What do you make of that, Harlem?
I think Chris Senior has a lot of stuff going on, outside of boxing, and at the end of the day, he's a father that's maybe concerned about the weight and concerned what effect it can have, and he's seen different types of trauma within boxing, and I think he's speaking as more as just a concerned father outside of boxing rather than someone that's really into this fight and rather than having his boxing head on. I think he has his his father's head on, and it's understandable.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the other time you both boxed on the same card, back in Cardiff, you seemed to bring the magic out of each other. Are we going to see the Eubanks steal the show once again?
100%. I think someone threw a stat at me on the last Cardiff card that I was the only one on the bill to get the stoppage. I think
that was me.
Was that you? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was you. Yeah. So let's see this time. But I think I'm going to open the show in fashion, and Chris is going to close it in fashion, and I think it's going to be a Team Eubank celebration.
How is everyone in the gym getting on as well? I almost forget everyone who trains in the gym these days, but I know that obviously you've got Michael Conlon in the gym, Josh Kelly.
Yeah.
How's everyone getting on?
Yeah, everyone's good. Everyone's got their own dates and targets locked in. Most people were out the gym for this build-up, really. I stayed in the gym since the last fight, so it's kind of been... obviously, Mick fought the week after me, so he's had his little break, and while I was kind of ticking over, hoping to fight on this one. So it's kind of been a quiet build-up. Abbas is just getting back into the gym. Mick's been back a few weeks now, kind of just as I've been tailoring up and now tailoring off. And Josh has started ticking over, kind of, as of kind of towards the end of my peak as well. So, it's been slightly different to normal having everyone in, but obviously Shannon's been in preparing for this one as well. So it's just been focused on kind of what I'm doing really, and maybe a bit less camaraderie than usual with everyone, firing off everyone, but still a good camp nonetheless.
Fantastic, man. And just finally, Harlem, before I let you go, if you've got any closing words to the listeners, say whatever you like before we let you go, my man.
Yeah, follow me on every platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Harlem Eubank straight through. And look forward to an exciting fight come 8th October. And continue to follow my career on from that.
Okay, listen, Harlem, as always, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my man. Thanks for your time. Best of luck Saturday, and we'll speak sometime after.
Nice one, Joe. Thank you, man.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part of the show. We're going to start here with this one. It takes place tomorrow, Friday, October 7th at the White Sands Event Center in Plant City, Florida, USA. Over here, Can Xu returns to the ring. I think that's got to be the first time he's boxed since losing to Lee Wood. He is 18-3 in a 10-rounder here against Brandon Benitez, who's 18-2. On the undercard as well, Kana Islam, 28-1, getting in with Javier Maciel, who's 34-17. That's over 8 rounds there. Moving out now to this one here, which is a brilliant fight that's kind of gone under the radar. I'm hoping we're going to be able to see it somewhere in the UK. But anyway, it's at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre in Broadmeadow, Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. Over here, I think it's going to be a great fight. Sam Eggington, 32-7. You almost don't need to hear who he's even fighting, to be honest, because Sam Eggington's never in a dull fight. Absolutely never. But he gets in with Dennis Hogan, who's 30-4, with a draw. I think it's a tough fight for Sam Eggington, to be honest, this one here. I could be wrong. Hopefully he wins. He's a friend of the show, of course. But Dennis Hogan, ever so tough. We've seen him in there with the likes of Jack Kulkai, the likes of Jaime Munguia, when he lost a majority decision that really could have gone his way. Then he lost to Jamal Charlo, and Tim Tszyu after that. But he has put together 2 wins in a row now coming into this. And he also was able to beat Jimmy Kelly, who put in a good performance against Munguia after that. So, yeah, I think it's a tough fight for Sam Eggington, really. Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. I hope that, that he wins, of course. And I'm wondering how he travels. Is he a good traveller? Sam Eggington, I can't think of him coming out of the UK to have a fight as a pro somewhere else aside from the UK. Maybe he might have found himself over in France or Spain at some point. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this is a long way away from home, and obviously there's a lot to adjust to in terms of the climate change, the time zone, all the rest of it. So all the best there to Sam the Savage Eggington in what will be his 40th pro fight. Moving out now to undoubtedly the big one this weekend. It, of course, takes place at the O2 Arena in Greenwich, London over here. Let's start with the undercard first. I'm going to run through this. Friend of the show, Lyndon Arthur, 20-1 in a fight here against Cesar Reynoso, who's 17-17 with 4 draws. Lyndon Arthur, I think, boxed about 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, it's going to be good to see him back out, even though the opponent isn't great. It's going to be someone to, I guess, beat up quite easily, getting that last little payday before the end of the year and come back stronger next year. Good guy is Lyndon Arthur, by the way. Shannon Courtney makes her ring return. I think she's been out for quite a long time. She's 7-2. She gets in with Gemma Rugg, who's 5-4. Also on the card, we just spoke to him a few moments ago. It's a 6-rounder here. Harlem Eubank 15-0, getting in with David Campillo, who's 11-3 with a draw. All 3 guys that he's lost to, though, have now retired from the sport. And he himself had about 6.5 years out of the ring. He returned back in earlier this year, 2022, after being out since 2015. So he himself had a massive long break there. He's come back with 1 win since that huge hiatus. Elsewhere on the card, Chloe Watson, who is currently 3-0, gets in with Nancy Franco, who's 19-17 with 2 draws. That's over 6 2-minute rounds there. We also have Galal Yafai defending his WBC International Flyweight title. He's 2-0. He gets in with Gohan Garcia, who's 12-1 with a draw. We've got Felix Cash, 15-0, getting in with Connor Coyle, who's 17-0. That one's for the WBA Intercontinental Middleweight title, which is currently vacant. I feel like it's been ages since I've said this, but somebody's O must go. Elsewhere on the card for the EBU European Super Bantamweight title, Spain's Mary Romero, the current champion, 8-2, gets in with the undefeated Ellie Scotney, who's 5-0 of Catford. That's over 10 2-minute rounds there. All the best to Ellie Scotney. And then the main event, the main fight of the weekend by miles, Chris Eubank Jr, 32-2. This fight here, of course, takes place at 157 pounds. He gets in with Conor Benn, who really is a welterweight. Chris Eubank Jr has weighed in as high as 168. Conor Benn, like I say, 21-0. Yeah, it's a fight that I don't think either guy needed, for their careers to take off. Obviously, Eubank has had a career that's been quite decent up to this point. I say decent, I don't say good or perfect or anything like that. He's had a decent career. He's gotten some big opportunities, some that he probably didn't deserve. I don't think he's been in there with the names that we want to see him in with. This is another example of a name we don't want to see him in there with, to be totally honest, if you're a hardcore boxing fan. Otherwise, if you're a casual boxing fan and people like Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr are huge names to you, and you've never heard of the likes of Gennady Golovkin, Charlo, Andrade and all the rest of those guys, then yeah, maybe you think this is a fantastic fight. But I don't. I think this is a little bit uncalled for. I think that Eubank Jr pretty much fights for money. I think that's his motivation. I don't think he gives a damn about becoming a world champion. I think it's all about money and image for him. As for Conor Benn, he's still undefeated. He's 21-0. I think he's probably one of the most improved fighters probably in the entire world of boxing, because if you saw his fights when he first turned pro, he was really, really shaky. He was really, unimpressive, actually, I'd go as far to say, having really close fights against journeymen and stuff like that. But since then, he's come on leaps and bounds. He's turned into a really good fighter. He's gotten some really good names out of there, but the step-ups have been very steady and very cautious and very careful. And this almost rips up the work they've put in to get him to the position he's in, because he's ranked in all the governing bodies and stuff. This guy is a guy who's right up there in the top 5 or whatever, in line to take on the likes of a Crawford or a Spence, the two top guys at the minute at 147. So yeah, he gets in here with Eubank Jr. Maybe it's to buy some time, because he'd definitely lose to Crawford or Spence. So maybe this is a fight that he's going to have to kind of probably keep his position at welterweight. And I guess if he lost badly or in any fashion whatsoever to Eubank, it probably wouldn't affect his business down at 147. So maybe this is just a little bit of a money grab where he doesn't have much to lose in terms of his business at 147. But he does have his O to protect. And I think he's done really well to, like I say, get to 21-0. So they've done a fantastic job with him up to this point. But yeah, like I say, that they've been weight classes apart for a reason. I've always felt that Eubank's too big. There's always been talk of this fight happening from when they both kind of turned pro, or I should say when Conor Benn turned pro, because he turned pro after Eubank. But when Conor Benn turned pro, there was talk of, oh my God, imagine if that fight could happen. And all along, we've always said Eubank is far too experienced for him, far too big for him. It's just unrealistic. It's great that their dads had such a rivalry, but we can't continue it with the sons. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't make any sense at all. But they are making it happen, and I still don't think it makes much sense. That's why I say it's a fight I don't think either of them really need. Eubank is probably here for the money. Conor Benn, I do really truly believe, wants to become a world champion, and they've been so smart with him up until this point. I think this is a really bad mistake, but obviously he's going to get paid handsomely for it. How do you see it, Eddie?
Man, very interesting fight. I mean, if you look at their fathers, man, it was a hell of a rivalry between them. But I do agree, the size difference just is always going to be something that people are going to look at. And it's unfortunate for Chris Eubank, because he's the bigger guy. So most people would expect, he's the bigger guy. You know what I mean? He's closer to his weight. And like you said, he's fight up to 168 pounds. This is going to be an advantage for him. And it's really going to be like Conor Benn really doesn't have much to lose, and this is a win-win for him. If he wins the fight, awesome. If he loses the fight, well, he fought a big guy. And with Chris Eubank, it's like, well, if he wins the fight, well, you beat a little guy. And if he loses, you lost to a little guy. You're finished. So it's a really bad situation, I think, for Chris Eubank, and that's why I think his dad. And I was listening and reading up on it and finding out a bit about it more than just hearing the names. And his dad is not even in favor of him taking the fight, which I understand. If you look at it from a business aspect, and even from looking at his career and the future of it, you don't want to put yourself in a situation like this. You know what I mean? It is really nothing good that can come of it for him. With the exception of the money. You know what I mean? He's going to make a little bit of money here. But, and also the way he's talking about it, he's like, he shouldn't even be in the ring with me. He's a smaller guy, but that's, he's just not on my level. He's not even on the level of the guys I've lost to, and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, maybe that's the truth. But if it is, and you go in there and lose to him, especially after talking like this, and, then you being a bigger guy and all of this, it's just going to really look bad for the rest of his career. So I understand why his dad is like, I don't really think you should be taking this fight, because it really just puts him in a bad spot in so many ways. And it's just like, why would you do this to yourself? But I mean, look, for British boxing and for the history and of his father, both their fathers and the rivalry they had, it just looks great. It's an exciting thing, and it's more so for the fans than it is honestly for the fighters. Obviously, I think Conor Benn stands to gain more, obviously. But really, at the end of the day, you don't want to get damaged in there, and he's fighting the bigger guy. And say if Chris Eubank comes out there and just bombs him out, can't be good for him even there. So, it's just it's a rough situation. But I think the fans win because you at least get to see the fantasy matchup actually take place. But for Chris Eubank, I think he drew a short straw with this one. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and I'm kind of excited to see how the fight's going to play out in terms of the style clash, because Conor Benn does deliver in terms of entertainment, whereas Eubank at times can fade away a little bit. And, some people like to say he tries to pretend he's Roy Jones Jr. and, he starts kind of taking rounds off and, posturing and, walking around the ring. And it just doesn't really... it doesn't look that good. And, some people think that he could let rounds slip away if he, starts acting like that while Benn tries to force the fight. He can end up losing so many rounds because, he's not on his game, that maybe Benn could have it quite close on the cards. I don't know. I'm really not sure how it's going to go. I think if I had to put my money on something, I'd probably say... I'm completely with Eubank Jr. to win. I think that's certainly going to happen. But whether it's going to be by stoppage or by points, I'd probably lean towards a stoppage. I think Conor Benn, you think about the best opponents he's been in with, it's all those kind of guys like Samuel Vargas and Adrian Granados and Chris Algieri, 140 fighters really. He has knocked most of them out, so good for him, and that's impressive to think where he's come from to now. But he's fighting a middleweight, and yeah, he's a little bit depleted, having to go to 157 and all the rest of it, and the hydration, they're not letting him hydrate too heavy and stuff. So I think they've tried to give Conor Benn as big of an advantage as they possibly could have, but I still think it's not going to be enough. I mean, he's fighting a much bigger guy, really. And, I don't think going to 157 is going to deplete Eubank enough where he's going to, not look himself. And I think he will have the bit between his teeth, even though we've seen him posting pictures of himself and videos of himself eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and other lovely looking food. I don't think... he's not showing us the hard training that we know he puts in. I think he does have the bit between his teeth. I think he will try to make a statement here. And, a lot of people are actually thinking he's going to lose. So I think that kind of stuff is what he needs to motivate him and fuel him. And I think we're going to see a good performance from Eubank Jr. I think he's going to put on a bit of a demolition display. And, you can't compare Chris Algieri to Chris Eubank. You just can't. And this is a wild step up for Conor Benn, who, as I keep saying, was manoeuvred so carefully to get into the position he's in. They've built him, perfectly. They haven't put a foot wrong, and I can't understand why they're choosing to do this. It has to be for the money. There's nothing else to gain from it. It is bizarre. But yeah, I think I'd probably go with a Chris Eubank stoppage late in the fight, second half of the fight, maybe. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was in the first half. But Conor Benn's not been in with anyone like this. I don't care what anyone says. Okay, that's that card there. Moving out now to the final one. It takes place at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. Over here, we've got, on the undercard, Gabriela Fundora, 8-0 in a 10 2-minute round contest against Naomi Reyes, who's 9-1. Despite having 10 fights to her name, she's never actually been 10 rounds. So this will be the first time Reyes goes 10 rounds. Fundora, obviously, the sister of Sebastian Fundora, the towering Inferno. Elsewhere on the card, let's talk about this one here. Fernando Martinez, who's 14-0, a fighter here from Argentina, only 5'2", only obviously a super flyweight. He gets in with Jerwin Ancajas, who's 33-2 with 2 draws these days. Ancajas in his last fight boxed Martinez and lost unanimously, lost his world title to Martinez, so he gets a shot at it here again. So I'm guessing there must have been a rematch clause there. Can't say I remember watching the first fight, to be honest with you. Elsewhere on the card, Carlos Adames, who's 21-1, fights here for the WBC interim world middleweight title against former Charlo opponent Juan Macias Montiel, 23-5 with 2 draws. I've always liked Carlos Adames, to be honest with you, but it was a bit of a shock when he lost to Patrick Teixeira back in 2019. Since then, he's put together a couple decent wins, one particularly good win against Sergei Derevianchenko. Montiel, really known as a banger, because all 23 people he's beaten, he's knocked out, and his 5 losses have obviously come to higher opposition like the likes of Munguia and Charlo, stuff like that. But he gave a good account of himself against Jamal Charlo. It was actually a really good fight when it was not expected to be good at all, if my memory serves me right. So could be quite juicy there. It's a decent undercard fight for sure. I think it's definitely an undercard fight. And also on the undercard, Igis Kavalauskis, Eddie, the Mean Machine, 22-2 with a draw. Hasn't boxed since 14 months ago against Virgil Ortiz Jr. when he was knocked out in what was a really fun fight while it lasted. The fight before that, of course, he was able to beat Mikkel Zuski in the bubble during COVID. That was a fight where I think he was behind on the cards at the time of the stoppage, so he needed that stoppage to get the win. And the fight before that was when he lost to Terence Crawford. So he's not in the best form, really, the Mean Machine, Igis Kavalauskis, but he steps in with Michael Fox, friend of the show, 22-3, hasn't boxed as well for 14 months, when he got absolutely robbed blind by Gabriel Maestra there for the WBA interim world welterweight title. Everyone knew what happened there, and the fact that Michael Fox hasn't in some way been compensated is just baffling to me. I mean, the WBA have kept him in their rankings despite being inactive for 14 months, but it's not really good enough. I think he's ranked number 12 or whatever in their rankings, but he should have been the interim champion. And yeah, since then, 14 months out the ring, he hasn't had an opportunity come by easy. And he did say to me a few weeks ago when I had him on the show that this was one of the only opportunities on the table against the Mean Machine. It's a really hard fight for Michael Fox, this one. But I feel like he's getting the Mean Machine at the right time, and I pray that he wins this fight. Lovely guy, Michael Fox. And then the main event, Sebastian Fundora, the towering inferno himself. We like to see him fight, Eddie. Not only is he 6'5.5", he's also a southpaw. He's also young, and he's also, I think, getting in that work with David Benavidez. 19-0 with a draw. Gets in with Carlos Ocampo, 34-1. The one loss came to Errol Spence back in 2018. Little bit of a padded record, if we're going to be honest with you. In fact, I say a little bit, quite heavily padded, if I had to say so. There aren't many recognisable names, and yeah, the biggest fight of his career was when he got knocked out in just one round by Spence. Which was quite terrible when he fought Spence in Texas. But anyways, that is that. Let's talk about this final fight here. I guess it's all about Sebastian Fundora. He's not going to be able to knock him out in just a round. I wouldn't have thought so, but he's on such a run, and I think there's a lot of people, every fight he seems to be having, we're believing more and more in him and his capabilities, and the fact that he could very well be a future world champion. He's on quite a run, beating Erickson Lubin last time out, Sergio Garcia the time before that, the Spaniard who is a really good fighter, beat Ted Cheeseman, and he's on a bit of a run. Jorge Cota before that, Habib Ahmed before that. The guy's in good form, but particularly I know that you were impressed with that Erickson Lubin victory, so it's good to see him back out here against Carlos Ocampo, the towering inferno, the 6'5.5" southpaw already.
Yeah. I like the fact that he doesn't, even though he's 6'5" or 6'6" or whatever his height is, he doesn't. I'm not saying he doesn't use it at all, because he does. Some of the uppercuts and some of the combinations, some of the shots he throws at range are good for a tall guy to use. But he comes to fight. He's not coming to take his time or just measure range, and he's not a boring kind of fighter, to be honest. And it's an exciting thing. It's an exciting thing to see. Kind of reminds me, not necessarily style wise, but maybe situational, if you think about it, like with a Diego Corrales. You know what I mean? Like I said, he fights a little more tall than Diego Corrales, but Diego came and all he was thinking about was action. He was thinking fight. And this guy kind of gives me that same kind of feel. Not necessarily the same style. Like, it's different. Like, he does some things. He uses his height in some ways. Obviously, Diego didn't use it much, but he has the capabilities, and he's a good enough fighter, definitely beyond good enough to win a title. I think he's definitely a future champion. It all depends on who's there and whether or not they can deal with him. I think he makes it a very, very difficult challenge. That size, the punching power, the ability overall. He's a special guy, and he's the fact that he's a really big, tall guy just makes it even more interesting. So I'm looking forward to his career, and this is obviously another step in the right direction if he's able to win.
Yeah, it's always good seeing him fight, and as you say, for a big guy, he does come to fight, he does make it interesting, and he does have the same reach as Vitaly Klitschko, which is crazy for a fighter at 154.
What?
There you go.
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
6'8" Vitaly Klitschko, and he got he's 6'6", so jeez.
Vitaly was 6'7", wasn't he, Vitaly? Yeah, 6'7", Vitaly. Vlad was 6'6", wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, they were saying 6'7", 6'8". But Vladimir is one of the biggest 6'6" you've ever seen in period. So I really don't think he's 6'6". I think he's almost 6'7" or 6'7", and I think Vitaly for sure is 6'8". But that's just me. I fought Dimitrenko, and he seemed very similar in size more so to Vitaly than Vladimir. But I mean, they're all big. What the hell? I mean, what's a half inch in between them? But it is what it is.
There we go. I love to pull out a little statistic there that takes people by surprise. That was cool, and yeah, that's crazy. So he's got a longer reach than you, Eddie, which is mad. A 154 fighter. But anyway,
wow.
Anyway,
that's saying a whole lot, Joey.
But anyway, that wraps up the preview part of the show in part one. Tickled me that. Part one, we did the news, the review part, and then the news, and then we welcomed our special guest, Harlem Eubank. Support him this weekend. You have to. He's a good guy, Harlem, as I'm sure you all know. And then in part two, we did the preview part. The final thing for me to do to wrap up this show entirely is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 364 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A special shout out to this week's guest, the undefeated super lightweight, Mr. Harlem Eubank. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. As I mentioned earlier, the interview with Harlem was recorded before the news that Conor Benn had failed a VADA drug test had broken, and so was the review and preview segments as well. At this very moment, at 2 p.m. on Thursday, October 6th, the card itself is still up in the air about happening. The press conference today was originally scheduled for 1 p.m. UK time, and it was pushed back to 4 p.m., which is 2 hours from now. So as of right now, no one is 100% sure what's actually going on, so I apologise if you were a bit confused by me previewing a fight that's in jeopardy and potentially not going to be taking place. But as I said, we recorded that segment before this stuff was made public. But yeah, that's about everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we shall see you all again next week.